reasons why I love you and none of them rhyme. 9 times 9, 81, Bonnie and Clyde. We got high and sat by the Wellington side. I had one hell of a time, it's rock and roll to life.
And just on the policy for the Advance New Zealand Party, we will fully investigate and remove any and all UN agendas and agreements from New Zealand government and society if they do not serve the people of New Zealand.
That's right.
I had a question from a Green team member, and they were asking, does that mean that we would remove ourselves from all UN agendas and programs, or what does that actually mean?
Well, as I said before, I don't think we're saying that United Nations is necessarily something that we should completely remove ourselves from. I mean, there's an argument to be had there as well when you look at the corruption at the top of the UN and the Chinese Communist Party that are riddled through the UN. So there's definitely agendas there that have got nothing to do with the well-being of New Zealand. But I don't think we're going to just cast out the United Nations and everything and say, well, actually, we're going to be isolationists here in New Zealand. But what it does mean is that, for example, with the Migration Compact, where we don't choose who comes into New Zealand, we need to look at that. We've got 120 significant ethnicities in New Zealand now. And I think New Zealand as a country and as a multicultural country is a very good model, but we want to keep that. We don't want to find that it's going to spiral out of control and there'll be more polarization. So it's that sort of thing. Do we really want to have someone else tell us who and how many can come to New Zealand, particularly when we've got other major issues like infrastructural issues, housing issues, health issues, that we need to make sure that those infrastructures can support an increased population, and maybe a population that can't speak English, that can't even read in their own language. It's not closing the door to them, but it's giving we the people the choice how many different ethnicities come in and how they will be properly supported, because at the moment, I mean, that's not even happening. They're just thrown in, and it's very hard for big numbers to integrate. So we're seriously looking at that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good explanation. Thank you. Another thing which has been a big issue for a lot of Kiwis, and I think has been the awakening point for so many Kiwis, is the V Word 19 Health Response Act, and the powers that the government has given themselves without following due process, without getting public consultation, without the people having input into this bill that oversteps our Bill of Rights 1990.
Yes.
What is the Advance New Zealand position on this legislation? And
well, the Labour government's COVID response, we will be undoing. And if you go onto our website, you will see our policy on how we will be moving forward, making sure that the people of New Zealand are safe from a virus, that New Zealanders have choice. We have the Bill of Rights, but it's not solid. Our laws are over here and the Bill of Rights are over here. We want to make sure that the laws sit on the Bill of Rights so that we have sensible laws that can't demand ownership of individual bodies. It is our choice, for example, whether we want to have a vaccine. And we're only hearing at the moment one very narrow corridor of scientific information. Even the World Health Organization have changed their tracks several times going from when COVID first came out. And we need something more solid. Any scientist or doctor that speaks out against the narrative of Jacinda Ardern's fairly severely punished one way or another through isolation or being vilified. And this is just the thin edge of the wedge. So when you have a government that is moving outside the legalities of a constitution, which we barely got, that's not a democracy anymore, that's a dictatorship. And so that becomes very serious. and particularly a government that's brazen and bold enough to say that they are the only source of truth. It just rings warning bells of Mao Zedong and Stalin and other tyrannies historically that we've had, and it should at least raise the eyebrow of every New Zealander.
Yes.
At the very least.
Yeah, and we're seeing people now marching. There's an awakening happening. People are just seeing where this. Where it's gone, and where it could go to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I liked what you were saying earlier about having that, trusting our intuitive feelings, our conscience when we're seeing things that are not sitting right in our gut, in our heart, speaking up, investigating, not just taking it, being more active. And it's for me, that's how it's been, and I can sense you've had a bit of that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to have critical thinking. We've got to remember that our government are supposed to be our servants, not our taskmasters. And that also ties into us as sovereign beings. We have the right to the pursuit of happiness. We have the right of freedom of speech. We have the right of movement. And when you start to have a government that says, no, actually, we're going to put you into home arrest. No, we're going to stop you saying these things on Facebook. Our fact checkers are really fact checkers for the government's narrative, not for the truth of the situation. When you start seeing those sorts of things happening, you're heading down the gurgler. You're in the vortex. You're going down.
Yeah. And we often see, like, people look at communist China and the censorship they have and the excessive government powers they have, and it's quite an easy to transpose it over to this is like almost the start of it.
Yes,
in our society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Ted Turner, the founder of CNN in America. He was asked about China, and as an elite, he said that China was one of their most successful experiments. So you might think China is a loose cannon doing their own thing, but they are coming under what the elites are dictating. And really, if we look at China now, that's what they're wanting rolled out. That's the experiment. It's working well. Now we're going to roll it out across the West.
Yeah.
But they won't. Not New Zealand. Advance NZ is here on our charges.
Yeah.
They're coming.
Yeah. That's really good. Another big issue for Kiwis, a lot of Kiwis, young people, is the housing unaffordability in New Zealand. There's studies that have been showing that a country with unaffordable housing is a country that a house costs more than 3 times the average median income. In New Zealand, we have places in New Zealand that housing is 10 times the average median income. What would Advance New Zealand be looking at doing to allow housing to be more affordable for our young people, maybe, for all people? Yeah.
Well, housing is knitted in, everything is knitted into each other very, very securely. So it's really going to be hard just to kind of pull things apart, tease it apart and see what we really need to do. Our housing policy will be out on our website shortly, but it's a very exciting one. And I can tell you it will make housing affordable for anyone that wants a house under our policy, that wants to buy a house, to own their own home. Under our Advance NZ policy, they will have that ability to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to nominate the big house on the hill like any Kiwi, like we start off with a house that needs to be done up. We put a bit of sweat equity into it. But the bottom line is that under our policies, every Kiwi that wants to own a house, we will put them on a pathway to do that. Now, I can't really say too much more at the moment, except that home ownership is a very important part of us being sovereign beings, and our home ownership is a very important part of us being free. And under the United Nations, when you look at some of the documentation that supports Agenda 21, home ownership is classified as unsustainable. That's taking us back to the Dark Ages, where you don't let the slaves own property, only the elite, the gentry own property, and the slaves don't. We are not slaves, we're independent, free people, and in New Zealand, under Advance NZ, you have the right to own your own home. It won't just be given to you on a platter like the rest of us. There will be mortgages involved, but we have pathways knitted in now that will make that available for any New Zealander that wants to buy a house.
I'm looking forward to hearing that,
it's
that
exciting.
policy.
Yeah,
because our current government came in on the major issue of affordable housing, and house prices have basically doubled in the over 3 years they've been in power. So housing has become more unaffordable. The gap between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, has been extended.
Yep. And this is Agenda 21. This is the reality. You know, put away all the feel-good words. This is the reality of Agenda 21.
Yeah. That is interesting.